The dirtiest method to seduce a woman is not lying to her, not manipulating the conversation, not pretending to be someone you're not. The dirtiest method is much worse for your ego. It is killing once and for all the childish fantasy that being a nice guy is enough for her to desire you. And accepting that attraction is a real game of value, tension, and emotional power. While you try to be the correct, understanding, always available guy, she feels only one thing: predictability. And predictability, in the realm of desire, is the equivalent of death. You live at war with something you don't admit. You're afraid of being seen as wrong, a jerk, too cold. So you put on the mask of the perfect man. You reply fast, you're overly polite, you agree with everything. You do everything you can to avoid being inconvenient. At the same time, you're addicted to female validation. You need the compliment, the reply, the look, the like, because without that, you feel like you're worth nothing. And behind all of this, there's a silent terror. Fear of showing interest and being rejected, fear of being exposed as the guy who tried and got a no. You don't realize it, but this entire package screams a message to her brain: I'll do anything to be chosen. The raw truth is simple and uncomfortable. Women are not attracted to the man who sells himself cheap, who begs for attention, who keeps trying to look perfect all the time. They respond to tension, to contrast, to the feeling that you have options. They feel more desire for the man who doesn't fold at the first opportunity, who doesn't need to prove every minute that he's a good guy, but who conveys, through his gaze and posture, that he's there by choice, not desperation. Attraction is not born from excessive kindness. Attraction is born from the combination of presence, unpredictability, and the power to refuse. Robert Greene calls seduction a silent game of power. The effective seducer is not the clown who entertains, not the servant who pleases, not the boy who keeps asking if everything's okay. The seducer creates emotional dependency through contrast and attention control. Instead of chasing, he makes time work in his favor. Instead of trying to please all the time, he offers calculated doses of presence, silence, provocation, and calm. He understands that her desire grows when she cannot fully decipher him, when she feels she could lose him, when she realizes he is not just another guy in line trying to be accepted. That is why this method is dirty. It is dirty because it destroys the romantic illusion that being kind, attentive, and available is enough to be desired. It is dirty because it forces you to look in the mirror and admit, I didn't lose because they like jerks. I lost because I played without strategy, without psychological reading, without emotional composure. The dirtiest method doesn't invite you to step on people. It forces you to stand up from your knees, stop begging for crumbs of attention, and start operating with standards, scarcity, and masculine presence. And this is not just talk. Research in social psychology at the University of British Columbia found that women consider men who display confidence and a slight trace of arrogance more attractive in first contact photos than men who are overly smiling, overly sweet, or overly submissive. In other words, what you think is being a nice guy is often read by her brain as weakness, as excessive neediness, as lack of internal power. Science confirms what real-world experience has shown for decades. The man who puts himself in a position of need loses before the game even begins. What I'm going to do with you in this video is completely dismantle the harmless nice guy mentality and give you a psychological method of attraction based on contrast, mystery, and dominant calm. No cheap tricks, no scripted lines. I'm going to show you how to become the man who chooses, not the man who begs. In the middle of the video, I will open a section of the Code of Seduction, a training where I break down, in detail, the real mechanism behind seducing women, advanced techniques of reading, behavior, and emotional game, built on psychology and practiced experience, not empty theory. It's a code that is not available in random videos on the internet. The link will be in the description and pinned comment, but before that, you'll understand why continuing to play as the nice guy is the most guaranteed method to remain invisible. The fatal mistake. Trying to seduce by being too clean, you don't realize how much you weaken yourself when you try to be perfect. Every time you adjust your tone of voice so you don't sound aggressive, every time you measure every word to avoid being misunderstood, every time you say, it's okay, when nothing is okay, you become less of a man in her eyes and more of an anxious candidate competing for approval. Female desire does not come from constant softness, but from the combination of calm and presence. Softness by itself becomes emotional submission, and emotional submission eliminates any trace of sexual tension. This is the point that destroys your presence. You present yourself as an impeccable man, but too impeccable to be desired. You believe extreme kindness shows maturity, that constant availability shows interest, that lack of conflict proves character. But in the psychology of attraction, it means something else. It means you are afraid. Afraid of losing, afraid of upsetting, afraid of being rejected, afraid of revealing your shadows and being seen as insufficient. This fear appears in your smile, in your response timing, in the way you adjust your posture when she gets close. And when she feels fear in you, she does not feel desire. She feels predictability. And predictability kills instinct. Evolutionary psychology is clear. Women don't seek only security. They seek emotion, intensity, emotional reading, and decision-making ability. Classic studies by David Buss show that traits linked to social dominance and self-confidence weigh far more in female desire than exaggerated kindness. It is not kindness that kills attraction. It is kindness used as a shield to hide insecurity. The man who is too impeccable sends a silent message. I am at your disposal, just choose me, and anything that is at someone's disposal loses value instantly. This is why she doesn't pull away from you, because you are too good. That narrative is just an excuse you created to avoid facing that the problem is something else. She pulls away because you offer no tension, no contrast, no form of healthy emotional instability. You don't provoke her instinct, you don't activate her curiosity, you don't awaken the sense of challenge. Your behavior is linear, predictable, and emotionally too clean. And when everything is too clean, nothing is exciting. Speed dating research conducted at Northwestern University by Eastwick and Finkel revealed something men ignore. People choose based on presence, attitude, and confidence. Not the perfect speech, not behaviors aligned with what seems correct, not declared intentions. And the man who tries to please loses to the man who exists with force. The man who tries to be the ideal candidate loses to the man who knows exactly who he is. The real world rewards attitude, not polite submission. That is why the applicable method begins with an internal rupture. Stop trying to prove that you are a good choice, because this automatically puts you in the position of someone who needs to be approved. Show standards through your behavior, firm posture, your own rhythm, clarity in your gaze. Don't reply immediately every time. Don't be available for any conversation at any time. Don't over-explain your intentions. The man who explains too much shows he is trying to convince, not that he carries value. And the rule is simple. You choose to. You're not there to beg, you're there to evaluate. When you absorb this truth, she feels it. And when she feels this, everything changes. The dirtiest method. Creating emotional tension without asking for anything. The silent mistake that destroys your strength begins when you try to seduce by asking. You ask for attention. You ask for replies. You ask for validation. You ask to be seen. Your gestures, your messages, your response timing, all of it reveals a dependency you try to disguise with friendliness. But in the realm of attraction, the one who asks has already lost. The dynamic does not work the way you imagine. A woman doesn't get closer because you show neediness. She gets closer when she feels that you exist in an energy that pulls, that creates a field that makes her want to participate. This invisible field is what separates the man who chases from the man who attracts. Reciprocity and emotional scarcity govern the game. Cialdini's psychology is clear. Everything that is scarce gains value. Everything that is given too much loses impact. The dirty method here is not manipulation. It is controlling the rhythm. It is knowing how to dose attention, curiosity, and vulnerability with precision. You don't deliver intensity in every message. You don't make yourself available for any conversation. You don't pour your energy out like water on the ground. You offer presence and quality, not infinite availability. Emotional scarcity is not coldness, it is self-control. And that is where the expectation break occurs. She is conditioned to a pattern. Men running after her, men over-explaining themselves, men trying to prove they are different. When you appear with calmness, real interest, but without rush, without urgency, without neediness, you ignite something she doesn't admit out loud. Curiosity. The question that appears in her mind is simple and powerful. Why is this man not competing like the others? This is the moment you begin to exist on her radar as an exception. And exceptions are desired. Science confirms this dynamic. Research from the University of Rochester shows that people value partners more when they maintain emotional autonomy, when they show interest without showing dependency, when they connect without dissolving into the other person. Attraction increases when there is a balance between presence and mystery, between connection and having your own life, between warmth and calculated distance. It's not absence, it's not coldness. It is a man who is complete within himself, yet still chooses to be there. Applying this method means entering the game of controlled tension. Never reply as if you were holding your phone waiting for her message. Your response time reveals your level of self-sufficiency. Break the pattern of always being pleasant with light provocations, subtle contrasts, elegant sincerity. And when you notice she shows interest, do not rush to close everything at once. Increase intimacy gradually, calibrating based on her return, leading the rhythm, leaving space for her to participate. It is this space that creates attraction. It is this space that creates pursuit. Now, if you want to understand this psychological game in depth, if you want to master the art of creating tension, calibrating your masculine energy, and reading feminine behavior like someone who sees the subtext behind every gesture, I reveal all of that inside the code of seduction. There I teach you the real mechanism that makes a woman desire a man. It is not a scripted line, it is not a trick, it is not theatrical roleplay. It is a system based on psychology, behavior, and emotional dynamics, a mechanism that transforms your presence into something magnetic, impossible to ignore. This knowledge is not floating freely on the internet because it requires structure, clarity, and precise application. The link is in the description and in the pinned comment. When you understand this mechanism, you will see why most men fail before they even begin. Brutally honest application: how to use the method without becoming a failed manipulator. The first mistake you need to eliminate is the idea that strategic coldness is synonymous with lack of character. Many men, when they hear about a dirty method, believe it means disrespecting, lying, manipulating, or playing with emotions. This interpretation reveals exactly what you most need to fix: your insecurity. Emotionally fragile men try to control everything using lies, speeches, masks, and cheap games. The true dirty method is the opposite of that. It requires more truth than you've ever had the courage to hold. It requires presence, clear intention, and self-control. Those who manipulate are desperate. Those who dominate are centered. The psychological foundation of this chapter is simple and profound. Self-control and self-worth are the pillars of mature seduction. Studies on emotional self-regulation show that people who control their impulses, time, energy, and reactions are perceived as more confident, more secure, more stable. And emotional stability is not monotony. Emotional stability is power. A man who does not react immediately, who does not change his mood because of a message, who does not fall apart at the slightest sign of interest becomes a rare presence. Rarity has value. Value generates attraction. And here is the dirty part you need to accept. You stop being needy without asking for permission. You stop seeking approval and begin acting from your own internal structure. The deepest expectation break is this: the real dirty method is to assume without fear that you are a sexual man. Not a desperate teenager, not a romantic hiding behind fake friendship, not a nice guy ashamed of his own desire. A sexual man. Clear, direct, calm. A man who looks, who feels, who desires, but who controls his own desire. This is seductive because it activates the natural polarity between masculine energy and feminine energy. She does not desire the man who pretends he wants nothing. She desires the man who wants, but does not need. The dirty method is this balance: internal intensity, external composure. No masks, no urgency. Science supports this truth. Research from Florida State University shows that women feel more attracted to men who combine three elements: confidence, assertiveness, and self-control. It is not aggressiveness. It is not submission. It is the exact point between firmness and serenity. The man who displays this balance activates the parts of the brain related to safety and excitation. He becomes desirable because he conveys emotional stability and inner strength at the same time. This is rare. This is magnetic. This explains why some men get attention effortlessly while others fight for every crumb. Applying this method in daily life requires brutal honesty with yourself. Stop hiding your intentions behind fake friendship. If your motivation is romantic or sexual, align your behavior with that. Not with aggressiveness, but with presence. Speak calmly, look with clarity. Do not over-explain yourself. Do not try to justify every gesture to avoid being misunderstood. Your behavior should carry your intention without needing to draw a picture. And above all, calibrate your energy according to her response. If she steps back, you step back. If she advances, you sustain the tension. This rhythm creates trust and desire at the same time. It is the dance of attraction, led by someone who finally understands what he's doing. This is the bridge between the common man, guided by fear, and the magnetic man, guided by intention. And this is exactly where your behavior begins to speak louder than your words. When you internalize this chapter, you stop playing like a beginner and begin operating as someone who truly understands the emotional field where seduction happens. From here, your identity changes, and identity, in the end, is what attracts the most. The dirtiest method is to stop living on your knees in front of female validation. The truth that closes this video is the one that bothers the most, the one that corrodes the ego of anyone who spent his whole life trying to be the perfect man, the chosen one, the accepted one. The dirtiest method to seduce any woman has nothing to do with tricks, games, or scripted lines. It begins when you break the emotional cowardice that has been guiding you since adolescence. It is dirty because it destroys the clean image you built of yourself, the image of the polite, gentle, available man who believes that being pleasant is enough to be desired. Seduction does not come from emotional cleanliness. Seduction comes from presence. It comes from the strength you hold but don't hand out. It comes from the man who acts, not the man who begs. Nietzsche spoke of will to power. but not the childish power of dominating someone. He meant the internal power of dominating yourself. Seduction begins exactly there. When you control your impulses of neediness, when you stop acting like someone seeking permission, when you stop seeing the woman as a source of validation and start seeing her as a possibility, not salvation. The will to power is what gives a man the right to choose. And the greatest difference between the man who conquers and the man who suffers is simple. The first chooses, the second begs to be chosen. The contrast between these two worlds is brutal. The common man lives dependent on her reply, lives dependent on the message that might arrive, the look that might appear, the like that tells him he still exists. He acts as if every interaction were a judgment. The man who applies the method, however, understands that his life does not revolve around female interest. He builds routine, body, mind, purpose. He elevates himself first and lets desire be a consequence. He doesn't chase attention because he knows attention chases those who possess real value. And studies confirm this path. Research on attraction shows that women respond far more to stable self-confidence, to clear purpose, and to emotional control than to isolated beauty, quick money, or showmanship. It is not superficial brightness that attracts. It is internal strength. The man who positions himself with clarity.
Most men chase. Most men beg. Most men crumble under the weight of their own desire, and the moment they do, a woman's interest dies like a flame drowned in cold water. But there is a darker path, a method whispered in the shadows of history, a tactic Machiavelli understood long before modern psychology gave it a name. It is not about tricks, not about games,